Welcome to the Why Music podcast, where we talk to independent artists about their journeys, their inspirations behind their music, and ultimately why they make music. This next artist is a member of the UK alternative band OWES. Started in 2020, they're hitting the ground running and building momentum following their debut EP. Welcome, Harvey.
Hello, thank you for having me.
I always this will be a little bit of a different sort of approach because we don't usually get bands on here, but where did your journey with music all begin, and then how did that translate into forming OWES?
Probably began I think like 14, 15 years old, sort of around that area. I started getting into like listening to music, sort of thing. It was like Slipknot and System of a Down and like all of that new metal stuff. My stepbrother kind of got me into all of that, and from there, I just wanted to hit the drums as hard as I possibly could and as quickly as I possibly could, and started there just with drumming. And then at some really weird point along the line, like my dad's a guitar player, so there was always guitars around the house, and I've always had from my parents like a really rich musical palette of so many different styles. So like that kind of felt inevitable that I was going to end up playing the guitar. I feel like eventually he'd have just got bored of me and gone, look, just learn a song right here. But I sort of picked that up, and then from there just started writing songs, just lyrics, and I've always liked writing and reading, so it kind of just morphed from that, I imagine. And then yeah, it was really strange. I was a drummer in a band when we were like 15, 16, and it wasn't very good, but like it was okay. It was like the first times you're writing music and you're feeling it out. And then yeah, from there, I genuinely, O's is such a weird one. I don't really remember exactly where it came from. It was like me and Jack, the drummer, um, we both did in England. You have GCSEs. It's like your exams, your standards. I don't know what it's called in the States, but we did music for that. So for 2 years, we were basically we both learned how music worked together, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And we just started like, oh, what you can do with an iPhone and a jack lead and an iRig nowadays is just ridiculous. Like you don't ever really need to go to big studios anymore. Like you could kind of do it all in your room. And we started doing demos on like GarageBand. And yeah, it just he signed us up for a battle of the bands like in February 2020, and we didn't have a band. So I was like, I don't know why we've done this because this is a stupid idea. So I like clubbed together two of like the first people in college that I saw. I was just like, you're in my band, come on. Like Callum, who's our guitarist now, he didn't play guitar at the time. I just saw him holding one. So I was like, you're playing guitar. He didn't play guitar. So he learned 3 songs in about 4 days. And then we played a gig and it was really weird. And yeah, from there, we just, a couple of changes and sort of just at the point now where it's like starting to, got a manager, trying to get around the country and yeah, just get a bit of a name for ourselves really. But yeah, it's all been a really weird little journey. I don't quite know how it's ended up here, but it has. And here we are.
So ultimately, it kind of came from an accidental battle of the bands opportunity, really.
Yep, completely. Like shouldn't have happened, but did, and now we're 3 years down the line, nearly four.
That's nuts. Do you like at the time that it sort of developed and you were working with the drummer, were you like, was there any sort of conversation about starting a band, or was it just kind of completely accidental that it ended up happening that way?
A bit of both, a bit of both, I'd say. Like I think the pair of us were always going to end up in a band. Like Jack's dad, who's like a legend. He sorts us out, so we use in-ear monitoring and like all this tech, and we've got access to so many things because he's like this music tech god of knowledge. and he's just like he loves it. He's so enthusiastic. He plays in bands himself, so like I think we both were like anchored by people who love music and we'd seen play music. And like when you then start doing that at 14, 15, 16, the school that we went to, really fortunate with the music department there. It was just magic. Um, so I can recall at like 15, I'd be playing in a funk band in Italy on a music tour that's like 13 piece, you know, full horn section, percussion, keys, two guitars, bass, five vocalists. It's like a huge setup. And it was like, it was that discipline really early on in playing music that kind of sets you up for like when you're going into a band, how you how you're going to do things, how you're going to interact with it, and how seriously you take it. Don't take yourself seriously because as soon as you start doing that, it just gets a bit silly. But like, take what you're doing seriously. Take your art and music seriously. Um, but yeah, it felt a bit accidental the fact that we've ended up in it, but also like I do think that there was a very strong influence from like the people that we had in and around us, what we ended up doing, where we went to school. All of these things just culminated in us being in bands, and then OWES, as I say, yeah, it was like a proper back of a fag packet band. Like the name, I couldn't tell you where that came from. I was just like, need some capital letters. I love idols. Yeah, Bosch, that'll do. OWES, yeah, there's loads of political connotations to that. Wicked, that's pretentious. What colour? Bright pink. Fuck it, why not? It was one of those. And then it just stuck. And it since then it just hasn't, you know, I was always really terrified of like we'll get a year in and go, this is rubbish. We've got to just rebrand. But like it somehow like accidentally created a bit of an essence around it, which is cool.
Hmm.
Like kind of does half of your job for you in a sense. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, when things sort of manifest themselves naturally in that way, like especially like there wasn't, like you said, there was
Yeah.
no intention behind the band name there, where you're just kind of throwing out ideas and if it sticks, it sticks and it's stuck. So like if that's kind of just manifesting itself naturally, it makes it that much more easy to focus on what most artists and band members want to focus on, which is the music itself. You don't have to give too much thought
Yeah.
to the image of it all because it's just kind of, if you it's just one of those random ideas that you're like, this is it,
Yeah.
and then you
It
just
comes
are
off.
following suit just because of that decision you made that one random day.
Yeah, literally, that's exactly what's happened. It's mental. When you put it like that, it is mental, but it's amazing at the same time, isn't it?
um what do you think most often inspires a lot of the writing that you guys sort of put together, like with songs and stuff like that? Like where do a lot of those things start? How do they um kind of create themselves? What is that writing process like?
Uh, Weirdly, there isn't much of a process. Like, I think because sorry, I just smacked the pop filter. I think because we started in 2020, like as soon as we started, it was like, cool, you're not allowed to go outside and see anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, oh shit, okay. Well, like you can't meet and practice. So we didn't. And we don't. We still don't. I think we've maybe rehearsed like three times this year. We just don't. It's really weird. It's like we've become creatures of habit from when we started. And what we do is just, I've always had this sort of knack for writing tunes out of sort of thin air. Like I'll hear, nowadays it's getting a bit scary because I can hear the layers of the songs in my head. And it's just about getting them onto Logic or Persona Studio One, whatever you're using. Um, so it sort of just came from doing that, getting these vague ideas onto GarageBand, and then I'd send it across to Jack because he's really good at producing. He's got really good ear for stuff. Um, so the majority of songs would just come from a random idea that I'd have, and I'd just sit there and write a song. It's like four chords or a drum loop, and it's like you never know what they're gonna be exactly, but like when you have an idea that just goes, yeah, and you're like, yeah, and the idea goes, yeah, and you just do it, and it's done. And now I'll listen back to some of these demos from like 2 years ago, and I'm like, how did we do that? How have we actually? There's little like earwig bits where I'm like, I can't even work out what I've done, but like, it's the beauty of it. So most of them come from that and like random riffs that the guys write um, will just get turned into songs. And like Jack's written quite a few, even if it's either like 16 bars or like 5 minutes. There's no in between with him. Like it's literally like I've got this riff and I don't know what to do, or here's a song. And then quite often it will be a case of like I'll have this full mixed instrumental bit of music and I'll like listen to it and it'll be like a minute and a half. And I'm like, okay, right, that's a verse. That's the chorus. Right, so just chop it up. What's the BPM, please, mate? Yep, wicked. Stick that in GarageBand and just it's like using loops. It's like everything I stand against. I just use loops from our drummer and he and it becomes tunes. But it's really strange. I think there isn't a process because we never were able to settle into any sort of process in the early days. Like it was very remote, very uncertain, um, but just ended up with loads of songs because all that we could do in like a 6 month period was sit at home and do nothing. So it was like, what do I do? Write songs. I think it just kept us all sane to an extent, really. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, 100%.
Um, yeah, it was really weird time, and I think yeah, there's definitely more of a lasting impact from all of that than we maybe realise. Um, but yeah, there's not much of a process to it. I wish I could sit here and delineate for you like this happens, this happens, this happens, but it is literally a case of one day I'm just like humming to myself, oh, that's a tune. Yeah, I'll go and do that then. Just go and do it and send it to the boys. It's really, yeah, it's nice. It's quite a spontaneous environment, which is quite fun.
Yeah, and I think that's where as creatives a lot of that is like that's where the like adrenaline rush potentially like comes from is it's
Yeah.
like that is because it like you said it's a lot of times it's just something inexplainable in a way of like how did like either it's a melody or like a set of lyrics and it's like how did that just come out of my brain and onto like paper or into the DAW or something. It's like
Yeah.
where like what about anything just made that kind of come together.
No,
And
it is.
yeah, yeah,
It's
that
mental. It's like you hear I don't know if you see this is a bit of a tangent, but like someone was asking it was in like the 90s and they like asked Bob Dylan, like the interviewer basically asked him, like, why don't you write any good music anymore? He was like and it was really weird. Like, he didn't get defensive about it. He just said it was something to the effect of like boots of Spanish leather. He was like, I didn't write that. You can't because you can't. There's no human being who's able to write songs like that because they're just so fucking perfect.
mhm,
It's like it's plucked out of the air, and that's how I feel about a lot of my songs. It's like I don't think I'm not clever enough to write that. Do you know what I mean? It's like that's
mhm,
just come out of the ether, and I've it's happened to lodge in my brain, and then I've put it, as you say, onto paper. You
mhm,
know, but yeah, it's really odd. But that's the magic. I think that's why AI is never going to really. It'll be a flash in a pan, won't it? It's like
mhm.
listening to Frank Sinatra sing "Gangster's Paradise" is cool twice, and then it's like, oh, this isn't real, so
Mhm.
let's forget about it. You know.
Yeah.
But like, you're never going to be able to replicate that magic, like a human being who's felt something.
Yeah. Yeah, I think,
You know,
you can do whatever with the voices, but I don't think the true like artistry and craft to the writing style and everything like that will ever be anything that, because I feel the same way. It's like the stuff that some of my favorite things that I've written are just like from messing around, and then whatever, like those just words just kind of came out. Like I wasn't thinking, oh, what's the next line? It just kind of happened. And then it's like, wait, like let me write that down before I forget about it, because
yeah,
that's something I
yeah,
need
yeah,
to
yeah.
hold on to.
No, it's nuts. It's just, yeah, the song writes itself at that point, doesn't it? Really?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that the stuff that kind of, either when it like, is there a difference, and like, not necessarily in terms of the process, because there really isn't much of a process. But when it comes from like an idea from like somebody else's riff versus something that you started, do you think that those, like, are you able to kind of identify differences between songs based on kind of where they originated or where the idea came from, or do you think that they all kind of manifest themselves in the same way because it is still like your guys's work? Does that make sense?
That's yeah, that's a really interesting question. Yeah, I think you just like there's certain songs. The main difference is like so I'm gonna just refer to me and Jack again because it's just easier because we just worked together and bounced off each other for like 5 years now. Um, stylistically, we are like chalk and cheese, like completely different. So like different tastes. We have like a core of like probably five bands that we're like we both love them. Do you know what I mean? But
Mm-hmm.
like in terms of how we work, in terms of what within a track both of us might appreciate differently, there's lots of variables. So like aside from just like how the guitars would sound, where they'd sit in the mix, it's like how the guitars played or how this would be like accented are very different things. And then when it goes from, so for instance, if it goes from me and I've written the chords and the this and the that and the solo, versus if it's come from Callum and Luke versus if it's come from Jack, you end up, it's really weird. We all end up playing sort of differently depending on where it's come from. And the process does change a little bit because it's just like the order gets moved around. It's a really weird way of putting it, but like, yeah, I've never really thought about that. But there definitely are differences. There's certain songs that have come from one person versus ones that have come from another. And aside from the fact that like it's a different style or genre or whatever, it's just the kind of DNA of the tune feels a bit different. Does that make sense? It's a
Mm-hmm.
really pretentious thing to say, but like the whole like yeah, the metaphysical aspect of the music is just slightly different. It's not, but that's why I love it because it's not noticeable to an audience, but it is like it's not like when you listen to if you listen to Waiting for Her by the Pogues versus Rum Sodomy and the Lash, you can go, this is a Spider Stacy song, this is a Shane MacGowan song, because it's quite disparate in a way, but also very similar. So it's like it's the same band, it's definitely the Pogues, but I can tell this one's more Spider, this one's more Shane, because they both do different things with it. And not that I'm going to compare us to Spider Station, Shane MacGowan. I'm not going to do that. That would be ridiculous. But there is this thing of like when it comes from one person and it goes through this person, then this person, versus when it comes from this person and goes through that person and that person. It just really jigs little tiny aspects of the song quite considerably, not noticeably to like the naked ear, but noticeably enough to us to bring it up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's
Like you
like,
notice those weird little bits and you're
mhm.
like, I love that. Let's do that more. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like if you were to take like a team and you keep all the same players, but you're moving around where they're playing. So your striker's now
Yeah,
playing like
yeah,
left back, and so it's just like, they're still them, and they're still playing that same way and kicking the ball around in the same nature, but shifting roles a
yeah,
little bit and where they come into play kind of changes the outcome.
yeah, 100%. It's like he might still be effective in that position,
Mm-hmm.
like he'll do a job, but like, let's say we put it over here, this would be so much better. It's things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's fun, it's enjoyable, it keeps you on your toes, and that's, I think, as long as you're not bored as an artist, you'll never stop doing things.
Mm-hmm.
Like writer's block, all of that shit, like don't care. Boredom, different thing entirely. Boredom is mental because boredom is when like you plug in a MIDI controller and you just go, oh, can't be bothered. And that sucks because
Mm-hmm.
you're not even trying. Like your brain stops trying. And yeah, and then you're just never going to do anything. So like keeping yourself on your toes, keeping it fresh for yourself and the people that you're working with is like so important. It's that
Yeah.
excitement. And as you said earlier, it's the adrenaline aspect of it.
Right. Yeah, that's because I think being like, it goes back to just kind of the whole creative thing. You can get as structured with that as you please and try and like force yourself into it. And it's always good to have those habits because then, you can push out more stuff. But at the same time, it's like, if you do that too much, you will get into a position where it feels too much like work and a little bit less
Yeah.
like play. And while it
It
is,
becomes formatted.
mm-hmm, and while it is work,
You
it's like you still want it to be something that you can enjoy. I think that's why like a lot of creatives just like to kind of do it as they please and create when something strikes because that's what keeps it interesting. So that's the like double-edged sword of like the productivity and kind of keeping things consistent
Yeah.
and just like letting creativity run loose.
This is it. And it's like you start when you do have those things in place, like don't ever write verse, like chorus, verse. Don't do that. Just don't do it. Just fucking write the chords, 1 4 5, whatever the key, fine. But like, don't don't lay your song out. Don't just go. This is ternary. This is what we're doing. That's it. Because like you just shoot yourself in the foot, and like it's really difficult to not do that because sometimes when it's your idea, you'll protect it because it's your idea, not necessarily because you think it's objectively good. It's like the pride thing gets in the way, didn't it? You
Mm-hmm.
know, especially like I think it's a bit of a British thing as well. Like we're a bit stubborn. Do you know what I mean? Like just love having a row with each other over nothing, and it gets in the way of stuff. Um, but like on the flip side, if you do try and be just completely off the cuff, like I'm a modern Bukowski or whatever, like then there's a danger of that becoming formatted, and then you're like shit. So you can be too formatted, you can be too strict, but then if you become completely not, that kind of becomes a format. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you make it a point that you're not going to stick on anything, you're not going to do this, you're not going to do that, suddenly you're doing exactly what you're telling yourself not to.
That is an interesting point, and I definitely agree. I think that's really, it's weird how that can kind of manifest itself in that way of like, the lack of structure then becomes the structure.
Yeah, yeah. And that's as dangerous as having too rigid a structure, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. If you
It's
had to,
just balance. It's literally balance. Sorry.
no, all good, all good. Yeah, balance is a hard thing to achieve as creatives in itself, but it's an
Yeah.
important thing. If you had to create a new genre around your style of music, what would it be called?
Oh man, it's like that's been the question for like 3 years, if I'm honest with you. Um, I don't know. I actually don't know. Honestly, the genre for O's would be O's. Like, that's it. I mean, there's like, you could listen to it. You'll listen to one thing. Like, the intention for us has always been, like, the EP, for instance. I'm so detached from that EP because like, I was 16 when I wrote half of it. I'm 21. Like, it's not, do you know what I mean? Still like it. I
Hmm.
think the songs are good. We wouldn't have done it if we didn't think they were good. But it's so far from what I'm writing now. It's so far from what the focus of the band kind of is now as well. It's really strange. The idea for me, I've loved the idea of like if you listen to the EP and then in 6, 7 years time, you listen to the album that's going to come out in 6, 7 years time, you would not be able to tell that it's the same band. Like you wouldn't, you just wouldn't. And that's like, I think it's because we've just always since we started making music, we've had Spotify. So like every album you could ever want, you just listen to it on the train. Like, do you know what I mean? It's ridiculous. There's just so much. And like the amount of influences we have, it'd be, I think, really difficult to stick to one genre of music or one sound. So like genre, I don't know, alt alt punk. I don't know. I'm reluctant to have the punk thing in there because like we're not really a punk band, but punk's a bit of a mindset to me rather than a sound. Yeah, post grunge alternative punk.
Fair enough.
Post grunge alternative synth punk. There you go. You can write that down. Post grunge alternative synth punk. There we go.
Okay.
Brian
Um,
Eno's got nothing on me, mate. He's got nothing.
so that's really interesting that like I mean I get the disconnect writing things at 16 and it's now coming out at 21. What
Mm,
about the stuff that you're doing now and like is yet to come feels so drastically different from what's existent now that makes you say it's going to sound like a completely different band?
mm. Um, I think you just it's a maturity thing. I think like the EP is very when I comment on it, I always feel like I'm slating it and slagging it off. I'm not. I do love it. I think it's really good, but it's a very juvenile EP. It's very like evident that it's a young band, and that's kind of the point of it. It is a young sounding, energetic, But it's not even a question of like what I write about because I don't know what I write about. It's just social observations and like feelings and just trying to make sense of the chaos in my head, really. So that will never change. I think it's just the more you write, the more you go like you figure out how to place words and aside from the technicalities of it, it's more just like you're more than a guitar, bass, and drums. There's nothing wrong with synths. There's nothing wrong with pianos. Nothing wrong with trumpets. They're wicked. They sound awesome. So use them. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you can kind of have a crack at using them on GarageBand, and like that's what we've always done. And like as much as I say the stuff that I'm writing now is going to sound different, there's stuff from like before some of the songs on the first EP were written that are going to come out in 10 years because they're just not for now. They're for like later because they have this. I don't know how, yeah, we didn't really have a conscious thing of um, this has to sound like this at the beginning, but it was always like there's certain songs where it's like, it's going to sound really crude. Apart from anything else, I want that to come out when we're playing Brixton Academy, not to 20 people in Shoreditch. Like, because it's like, I think you give it more, when you start giving it credence as like, this is some of our finest work. It's like, save it for later then. We'll save it for when people are gonna give a shit. Do you
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's really weird, but like what I'm writing now, it's yeah, it doesn't feel any different. It's still fun, it's still exciting, and that's the point. I think it's just I now find it easier to finish writing a song. I know kind of it completes itself quite quickly. That's not to say I just complete it and then go, that's done. I'm never going to look at that again. It changes and changes and changes. Um, but I don't know, there's not a conscious thing of we're going to sound like this now, we're going to sound like this in 2 weeks, we're going to sound like this after that. It's just, it's just a maturity thing. You just grow with your music. And I think the thing for me and the rest of the band, I know Jack is definitely of the mind. It's like there's this whole thing of like albums are dying. It's like they're not, you know, obviously people do, not people, some people have like an attention span of 10 seconds nowadays. And like, if it's not a slowed, reverbed version over the top of a fucking GTA video, no one wants it. But it's like, fine, that's cool. There's always going to be, I'm always going to love an album.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always going to be gassed when I've waited 3 years and my favourite band puts an album out. Of course I am, because that's what music's about. And the intention where an artist has done an album that has a continuity to it. And I like that we still have, I'm so relieved when I see artists who are like massive, like Dave coming out, your debut album being Psychodrama is just outrageous. Like, you have no right to do an album that good. And it's so chronological, it's got such a narrative to it, and We're All Alone This Together is the same. Having artists who are like in the kind of pop world, like the mainstream area, who still love doing conceptual art is
Mm-hmm.
like such a relief. You're just like, oh, okay, it is in good hands. It's not just about let's do a single every month all the time. And then when we do an album, it will just be 10 singles. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Just get as many collaborations on it as you can. Yeah, sell it out, love it. I think it's so important that artists still want to put their heart and soul into 50 minutes of music, 45 minutes to an hour, 10 to 15 songs, whatever, and do that and be like, this is my long form statement for this year, for these 2 years. Like, I don't think that's ever going to die out particularly. I don't want it to, because that's how I just write loads of songs, and then I'm like, well, you've got to go somewhere. I mean, fucking hell, you sound like that. That's in the same key as that. Cracking. Put them together. That works. That works. Yep. Put them. Suddenly, you've got an album, and then it's just like I'll put the same guitar tone on it, and before you know it, you listen to these songs off the back of each other, and you're like, oh my god, this actually sounds like a good album. This actually sounds cohesive and really cool. Um, so yeah, there's not any. It's weird. There's loads of structure to it, but there's no structure whatsoever. I don't know how to explain it. It's like the structure creates itself the more it's like gravity. Like, the more songs you have, they just pull together with each other, and then you have a collection. It's just not forcing it. That's the most important thing. Can't ever force it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I am also a fan of albums. I don't think that they'll ever entirely go away, but I think
Mm.
so. I think that, and as you're kind of walking through that, it's kind of made me like think about this in even more of a, it's like now it's all like clicking for me. I think because there's a ton of people that are doing like the independent artist or independent band thing right now and like making music in their basement and releasing it and whatnot. And I think the disconnect for why a lot of those people don't make it beyond singles and are just doing the single thing and not even probably even on the structure of every month or every other month and just kind of doing it as they please is, with an album, you're following this sort of cycle. Your process is to go through all of the writing and producing and all that, and then move into promotion and whatnot. And
Yeah.
because things are like, if you're going through the single process and trying to like work with the algorithms and all that and treating it in a true single fashion, it's like you're going through the process of making that one song, promoting that one song, and releasing that one song, and then you have to do it over again, and you're not going to
Hmm.
cross through those phases, so you're not going to be in this like promotional stage of the song while also creating what's next. That's going to separate the headspace, and it's not going to do you any favors. But thinking about it in more of an album sense, and even if you do like release half of it as singles leading up to the album, I mean, you're doing yourself a favor on the algorithm side of things, and the like, you can get people's attention on one song. It's easier to promote one song than a whole project.
Yeah.
um and that single really will just get them in the door, which is great. But if you're looking at it as just singles, it's like you're trying to be in like two or three different like headspaces and like phases of the release cycle at once, and that just doesn't work. And that's why it's, we see somebody release a song every 6 months, or like an EP, and then don't do anything for
Yeah.
another year and a half. It's like we
Yeah.
need to at least be in the album mindset of like, put all these things together and then work through it, because then you can do those phases after all the work is done.
Yeah. Do you know, you've absolutely hit the nail on the head because, like, one band who I think do it really well, and I get so much stick for liking them, is the 1975 because they're this pop band, right? They're this massive pop band. They're commercial as fuck. They've sold out, whatever. He's a nepo baby. He's this. He's that. Fine. They are just brilliant though. Like the stage is incredible. The like there's so much like lore with it. It's like if you were a Lord of the Rings fan, like it's like books. Do you know what I mean? I think what it is for me, because I've never done an album, right? I've never released a record.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know when we will, I don't know, but we will at some point. The music's there, it'll happen. I intend to release albums for my entire life. But it's like for me, I love when they start doing an album cycle and it's like the colors are different, the outfits are different, the haircuts are different. Holy shit, what are they going to do? There's these 30-second teasers, sound bites, and it's not actually that much stuff. They've gone, we've done an album. Okay, those are the singles. People love them. Okay, all of these singles, chop them up into 30-second bits. Wicked. What we wearing, lads? Cool. Suits. Love it. Brilliant. Let's go and film some videos somewhere. What's the vibe for the videos? All right, we'll stick to that. It's like there's like 4 or 5 actual bits where you have to think about it. And it's not hard to think about. It's really not that fucking difficult. But they think about it in such detail and so well. And I don't know, it looks like this cinematic universe. But obviously they do have like they can work with anyone they want. Like they can just call Jack Antonoff to come to the studio and he's like, I'm there. And that's mental. Do you know what I mean? It's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And like any videographer, and it's the backing of like 4 or 5 videographers, choreographers, set designers, makeup artists. That's a whole different ball game. But when you have that resource, it's like your duty as an artist to think about everything, to think about every single facet of what you're doing and build an identity around it. And like, I think that's what they do so well with albums. There's a lot of bands who I'll love the album, but I'll love the music, but I won't like pay much attention to the 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 around it. Do you know what I mean? Because
Mm-hmm.
there isn't much. Often there's like a let's just do a record, and that's fine because I love an album. But I think for me, it's always about like as a band, I really want to do things in a way that if I was a fan of the band, it'd be like Easter eggs. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Those little things where like when people nerd out about your band, they'd like fixate on that thing that you did. They're the little things now because like you can't just write good songs anymore. It's actually not enough. It's so saturated. as you say, there's this bedroom thing where you can just literally never leave your house and have a song that sounds good on Spotify. It's insane. And
Mhm.
like not even that much money either. Like if you put obviously 3 grand is a lot of money. I don't have like 3 grand just sat there to just go and spend, but like £3,000 or $3,000, you can get yourself a really functional home studio. Like really functional.
Mhm.
You don't need to spend like this is a Rode NT1. I record all of my vocals on this. It cost me 150 quid. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, yeah, some would argue if I spend 20 grand on a ribbon mic, my low end response is going to be whatever. Okay, fine. But like then you look at artists like Fred again, who just has a Mac and an iPhone and does it all on that and was on I think 30% of UK number ones last year or something stupid. Like 30% of number ones in the UK he produced or was credited as a writer or something, all from a MacBook and an iPhone and a talent and an ear, like an ear for what you want to do. But it's like there's so much confusion. Do you know what I mean? Because there's still the studio thing of like we want to go to studio, do this, and do that, and fine. But I don't know. It's a really weird time to be trying to hash out how we want to do things because like last week's thing isn't a thing anymore. It's just gone and you've forgotten about it. Like name if I asked you, name every trend from the last 18 months. My brain explodes. I can't. There's a new one every day. Do you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
it's impossible to keep track on things, and that's why I think it's so important. Like artists just need to rely on the art. You rely on the art. You build that. You build that from that. You build that from that. You build that from that. And before you know it, you've got a really credible, really interesting palette of things to work with.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's there's a lot of blessings and a lot of curses to be doing music independently today. And that's really
Yeah,
all there is to it. It's like depends on how you look at it, depends on how you play your cards, but it's yeah.
it's chaotic, isn't it?
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. Um is there a release that you think best embodies the band as a whole in terms of like the one song you would show somebody to convince them to be an O's fan?
Uh, there's it'd have to be money's worth, wouldn't it? That's the one that like goes off.
Get your money's worth. Well, John got shortchanged, what an utter disgrace. So he punched the shop assistant directly in the face. He couldn't hack that he'd made a mistake. I'm very sorry, sir, I made a mistake.
Like it's really weird being like a because we're still like a local band, right? Like playing that song and like the audience know the words. That's still not you're not quite used to that. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It'd probably be that one. It's a bit of an earwig, but honestly, I think all the cool kids do it would probably be oh, but no. Every single song on that EP has the potential to hook someone in. And that's kind of the
Mm-hmm.
point of it. You know, like money's worth is like if someone was like a really punk driven person, be like, yeah, that one's for you. Someone who likes stuff that's more like low endy, like that sort of more um noise punk, I'd go with Night. If it was more like poppy, I'd go with all the cool kids do it, or in the city because they've got more hooks in them. It's really, there isn't a one song that I'd stake the claim on, if that makes sense. It's really tough. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a shit answer to a question where you just want one answer, but it's a really difficult one to answer. I think that's the, yeah, you talk about blessings and curses. That's the blessing and curse of like making loads of different types of stuff. Because like the second, honestly, the second EP is what I'd give people. It's obviously not out yet, but that's what I'd play people to like get them into the band because they're just, it's four really catchy, like cleverly done tunes. It's four pop songs with like some aggressive vocals in it. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, yeah, I think just I like writing songs. I don't think there's anything wrong with a 3.5 minute song that goes verse, chorus, and has a chorus a minute in because people like that. I think obviously, as I said earlier, if you make it so that okay, so before we write the song, that's going to happen. Don't do that. But like, if the song falls and you've got a catchy chorus that smacks you in the face at a minute in, you could be pretty happy with yourself. If that lines up and that works, that's a
Hmm.
really good structure to have.
Yeah, the structure shouldn't be the foundation. The structure should be the like game plan. Like it should come
Yeah,
from an
right.
idea itself, and then you can you have that idea there, and so build the rest of that around that. But don't just like go in and be like, okay, we're following that same
Yeah,
structure
100%.
and whatnot. Because if you let the songs manifest themselves, like a lot of them will follow different structures, and you might discover a structure that works for this that you haven't done before. So it keeps things new and interesting.
Exactly. And that's like what we were saying earlier. That's the pretty much the only thing that matters when it comes to the creative process.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, like you want, ideally, someone comes along and says, here's £10 million, you're keeping the rights to everything, go and do what you want. That'd be wicked. It's not the reality though. The most important thing is to just never get bored.
Yeah, because if you get bored, people are going to be bored consuming it.
Right, exactly. I think you can always sense like because there's obviously a bit of like Arctic Monkeys, right? Easy one to go with, fucking really easy one to go with. People will always fixate on favorite worst nightmare and whatever people say I am. And like they're unbelievable records, unbelievable era, and the context that they were like children and they headlined Glastonbury is just mental. But that's done. Like Alex Turner isn't gonna write chip shop rock and roll to quote him. Like he's not gonna do that anymore. And like, The Car, is it my favorite album? No. Tranquility Base, I think is wicked. But like what I like about them is that you can sense that he's, as the writer, isn't bored of it. Like he's challenging himself with it. And he really is challenged. They're weird. They're really strange songs, some of them. And it's like, it's not going to land with your like 15-year-old indie lover, really. But I don't know. I think it's an important thing when you appreciate an artist that you can look at songs that you maybe don't like and still go, okay, you're trying to do something. You're trying to do something that's interesting to you, that you feel is uh, intelligent and considered, and ultimately that a lot of the time that actually comes above whether I like the song itself. I end up like with Tranquility Base. I ended up not liking the songs at the beginning, and then the more I listened to it, like not just listened to it, the more I listened to it, like the what's going on here, words, instruments, in and out. The more you start to go, okay, they're actually, I can see they're doing something. They're trying to do something that's not what they were doing 10 years ago, and that's cool to me. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But it's very hard to get past for a lot of people. Like, just play I Bet You Look Good on the Dance Floor, please. Do you know what I mean? And I do get that because they're great songs and they're timeless. But I think there's a lot to be said for where you draw the line under certain things and just go, that isn't going to happen again. It was magic when it happened, but that's why it's magic, because it happened then and it happened once. And if you saw it, you saw it. If you didn't, you didn't. They're not going to write that album again just so you can be a part of it. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's
it's a really tough one, that.
Yeah, it's a really good point. It's because, you know, if you're doing it for long enough, there is an urge to do something different, or there's an urge to stay a little bit too at home, and it's hard to find that balance of like, let's do something new, but also like, let's do something that still is us at its nature, and like it feels very just like at home for the people that care.
Yeah, I think to that point as well, that's an interesting point. Like when it, because what like Arctic Monkeys fans think is their nature, they actually don't have a clue, because like you don't, like when Alex Turner drops a glass at home, he doesn't sing a verse and do a pirouette. He probably goes, fuck's sake, because he's a human being. So like what the fans and everyone thinks of it, as much as it is like the most important thing, because like if you want food in your fridge, you kind of need your fans to buy your records and come to your shows. Ultimately, no one no one knows. No one knows what your writing process is. No one knows where that song come from, what it means to you. They're just gonna sit there and go, it's not fluorescent adolescent. And like I say, I get both sides of it, because I'd bloody love if they did an album that was like that again. I'd love it, because I'm a massive AM fan and I think they've still got it in them. But I also appreciate when you're that far into your career, you don't want to do what you did when you were 18. Because I'm 5 years down the line from 16 and I'm sick of the songs I wrote when I'm 16. Do you know what I mean? Completely sick of them. So it is one of those things, like it's difficult to balance what fans and critics and charts and whatever, what all of that is asking for, versus what your art wants you to do in your head. Because like, as you mentioned earlier, like if you're going to try and force yourself to do something, forget it. It's just not going to work.
Yeah.
Because like if the artists don't want to do it, it's not going to happen.
100%. That's the tricky part about structure and art kind of mixing together.
Yeah.
If you had to pick 2 or 3 artists or bands that you think OWES is like sound wise is like a combination of, who's on the list?
1975, definitely. We basically nick everything they do, like the pedal, excuse me, the pedal notes in the songs, the arpeggiated synth lines, all of that. Purely because I think, well, and they've probably nicked it from this guy, who nicked it from this guy, who nicked it from this guy, who nicked it from someone in the 50s, because that's just music, isn't it? Like, but definitely them in terms of how they lay their songs out and the textures within it. I don't know. Definitely like, oh, such a hard question. I should have prepped for ones like this, because these are always the ones that trip me up. Any like post-punk band, like Idols, stuff like that, definitely have had a bit of an impact on the stompiness of the music. Honestly, like I think genuinely in the way that the music is played and the way that we produce, and the way that we think of stuff, it just goes back to like funk and soul. It's really strange. Like Jack as a drummer, for one thing, he's like an immensely tight, pockety, Philly drummer. who can smack the cymbals really hard, so it works for rock music. But yeah, probably there's probably more influence from like pop and funk and soul than you'd maybe think. If I was to say the bands that we sat, I would say like Frank Carter and the Rattlesnakes, Idols, and like the Blinders, because they're just three songwritery heavy punky bands. But it's like the sound of the music versus the actual music are different things. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's really weird. Yeah, that's a really tough question. I think purely because like we just listen to so much and always have. So like one song is really Blinders-esque. One song sounds like The Strokes, you know? Oh, The Strokes, yeah, The Strokes, big one, definitely. Just like every single band of white blokes since 2005, The Strokes have inspired us. It's like the first 6 months are just figuring out how to not rip off The Strokes, Arctic Monkeys, and like Sex Pistols. You stop doing that and then you start writing music.
I think part of why that question gets kind of convoluted, especially from like a band perspective, is like the way that you look at the stuff that you guys write and put out is going to be different than the way that your drummer and your guitarist like does. Like, you know, like it's, everybody's going
Yeah,
to have a different thought process because as individuals we have different roots of like what we listen to. Even if you guys like have, like you said, you and Jack have like a few of the core similar like bands, but like there might be
mm,
some bands that he's listening to that you're not, that's like, oh, like there's this part, like this sounds a lot like they did in like this record or something like
yeah,
that. It's like
yeah.
the way that you kind of look at it is going to be filtered through your own taste as well as filtered through your role in creating the music.
Yeah, it's like variables fucking
Mm-hmm.
everywhere, you know. And like I said, yeah, we have that core of like a couple of bands that we listen to, but like my roots in terms of getting me into playing music is like the most disgusting tech metal that would like send someone, if you played it to someone from Victorian times, it'd send them into a coma, mate. It's just horrible. Like, and I like listening to music that is disgusting and like really heavy and downbeat and dirty, and that's like it's weird because we don't make music like that at all. But there is points where the influence of like gent and tech metal and deathcore is like really prevalent in our music. It's really odd. And this is it. Like you said, one person's influence. Like Jack can't stand that. He hates that sort of music with a fucking passion. He just won't listen to it. He's like, I don't understand how you can listen to it. It's awful. But like we're in the same band. And that's the
Mm-hmm.
I think it's great. I think it's brilliant that people could have really contrasting tastes, but it comes together to form a slightly bigger picture. And that's how you get new stuff because tastes
Mm-hmm.
combine. You get this. It's like a tree. It's just branches, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it, and a great, yeah, just a great way to put it, is because it's like the way that you view things is going to be different than somebody else, but it's like if we can collaborate and connect in some sort of way, something new will come out of it for those very reasons. And so it is just like
Yeah.
splitting into new ideas and whatnot.
No, spot on. 100%.
What is it that you think sets you apart from other bands, other indie acts? What is it that you think sets OWES apart?
Uh, what sets those apart is the stuff that no one can see at the minute. I think what sets those apart is the fact that there is so much music, so much, like ready to go. Like if money and time and jobs weren't an object, like so much would just be so easily done, you know. I don't know. I think I've definitely got a knack for writing. I've definitely established one over the years, and Jack's definitely got a knack for production. And like when those two things come together, like even really basic demos sound really good. I think the other thing is that like the perfectionism probably. I know every band are perfectionists, but like we've always really like as you'll well know, shied completely away from the social side of it, really. Like we're not very present on like TikTok because we are categorically never going to do a video. Like like I can tell you this, die on the hill. We will never do a video that's like, "Hey guys, it's O's, come to our show, tickets in bio," all of that shit. Like it's never gonna happen because I hate it. I just hate it. Like I'm a really grumpy old bastard when it comes to all of that because it's just so like it's not unique. It's like how do you stand out online? Yeah, you've got to do the exact same thing as everyone else is doing. It's like, what? How does that fucking work? So like we need to work on that. We need to work on being more present on socials. But like I think it's just what sets O's apart is that it's just O's. It's that it doesn't make sense. It's a seemingly dysfunctional unit and it doesn't work and it is like dormant under the waves and then we'll just like have a show and it's like, hi, we're playing a gig. And that's it. Like you just post it, like get the tickets if you want, and you bash out an hour and 15 minute set and you think that was good, lads. Well done. It's just about trying to because I think if we were like 25 years earlier, obviously taking away the fact that we have the access to the technology and whatever, if we were like 25 years earlier, I think we'd be in the money, we'd be massive because like it was a fact of if you play this show and that guy from that label likes you, he might just have a contract in his pocket and you just sign it and you just go and record a record and then they put you on tour with someone. And there's no like back then it was really not easy. Easy's the wrong word, but like artists like Bowie, I know that's a ridiculous one to like bring into a conversation about my band, but like Bowie was one of those artists where he was given the resources. It was just like, right, mate, we think you're fucking brilliant. What do you want to do? Just go, off you go, mate, do it. And he did it, and you get that, and it's incredible. But nowadays, yeah, I think the odds of just being handed everything you could want to do your stuff quite slim. Because as I say, we're at the stage of where it's just assuring people that we're really, really good. They should buy our merch and our tickets and listen to our stuff because we say so. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But at the minute, there's honestly nothing that makes us stand out. We're really dormant, very quiet and reserved band. But I think that's what makes us stand out. Like we turn up on stage, we all look miserable. We're all wearing shirt and trousers. There's not much like oh yeah, it's like crowd engagement. There is crowd engagement, but there's not loads of it. It's quite stark. That's all. That's like the identity that we've kind of arrived at and sort of gone, we'll do this. I love bands that just singer turns up and he just looks like he fucking hates everyone. He looks miserable. Everyone looks sullen and smart and proper. And then they just get into this music. And it's like watching this like unit on stage. It's like I heard a really good comment about You know Royal Blood?
I do not.
Not heard of Royal Blood?
Mm-mm.
Wow, that's crazy. Seriously? Holy shit, that's mental. They're like a bass and drums, like a I guess like yeah, like rock band. They're good. They're a good band. Um, first couple of albums, like one of those that get you into music. They're another band that we probably sound like as well, Royal Blood, to be fair. Definitely had an influence. But like there was a moment where he got off stage and walked out into the divide in the crowd with his bass and that. And suddenly he goes from being the singer of Royal Blood to a guy in a jacket and trousers standing in the crowd with a bass, and no one's really that into it. And it's like the second you break break the fourth wall, so to speak, I don't know, it's the majesty of the band thing. Do you know what I mean? That when you lose that, you've kind of lost 60% of your acclaim, particularly in a room of people who don't know who you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if suddenly we go from being this weird, moody, atmospheric, you know, untalkative force of nature, if we didn't do that and it was like, backs against each other while doing the solos and like glam rock, Greta Van Fleet, Led Zeppelin shit, like, not that I have a problem with that, but it's just not us. It wouldn't work. So it's like, yeah, it's really tough. It's just trying to not stand out too much, because when you start trying to stand out too much, you stop standing out
Mm-hmm.
because you become like everyone else who's just trying to elevate. Yeah, it's the forcing thing, isn't it? It's like, and you can always tell when someone's really forcing it. It's just like, stop, just get it back to basics. If you've got a good song, build from that. It's like exactly what you said earlier is like, I think people lose the whole process thing, because as you've mentioned, I've seen some of your posts on LinkedIn. It's like the immediacy. We've got just like post 15 times a day. It's like, if you're an artist, you actually can't do that. Like hammer out 15 bits of good content a day. Are you insane? How do you do that? It's not possible. Like, it's actually just not possible. If you have a 4-minute song and you're splitting that up into 15 segments, it's like, even that, people are bored of it. You're bored of it. Everyone's bored of it. So it's like, for us, it's like balancing the tradition with the modern, like balancing the cool as fuck post punk bands from the 80s who were like really incredibly moody and gothic, and like the whole noir thing, and like also TikTok exists. So how do we make that work? We're in the feeling out process of that. But I think we know who we are. We know what we want to do. We just need to kind of decide how to do it properly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think like yes, you can tell when people are faking it, and you know, if that's not the nature, it's hard to make that become the nature. That's why I
Hmm.
think like with branding and everything, it's like not even from like the visual branding and all that kind of, but like what's going to make you set you apart, which is essentially the backbone of what your branding should be. It
Yeah.
has to be an internal look rather than an external find. It has to be like, okay, what is it about me or the band or what we're doing that's new and different, and something that we can lean into and make our claim, essentially, because that's what's going to separate. And we're adding new noise to the atmosphere, but if you're
Yeah.
looking outwards for that, you're already screwed because you're
No, I
looking
think
for
you're
something that's not
completely
already
right.
there.
Yeah. No, I've never actually heard anyone put it quite like that. That's perfect though. It is just like, And it's so easy to get wrapped up in it because you sort of like, so what do we do, boys? Oh, let's go look for some inspiration. Uh, you know, it's like, okay, that's a great thing to do, but
Mm-hmm.
there's a way to do it. It's like for us, there's like aspects of the way that this band did this uh live video was really cool. Maybe we could hone in on that, you know, create some content rather than let's what song's trending, let's cover it and put it on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Because there's quick ways of doing it, but credibility always sneaks up on me and enters into it. I was like thinking last night, literally just I played a gig, really nice. You know, it was a solo show, really receptive crowd, one of those really nice ones. I was sort of sat there going, you know, got home, I was having a smoke. I was like, would I actually be able to live with myself if I ended up TikTok famous? Would I be all right with it? Do you know what I mean? Would
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, if like this song that I really, really loved, I was told by some twat, no, not that one. You're going to use this one and you're going to do reels and you're going to enjoy it. And then it gets 25 million views. Would would part of you be going, fuck's sake? That's not the way I want it to come up. I don't feel credible, you know? Am I just going to get now eaten up by the big beast and spat out again? It's like there's so many variables nowadays. And it's like to have to be in a position where you're like, yeah, I want to be massive, just not like that, man. Come on. It's like mental. There's so many avenues that you could go down. You don't really have a choice. You really don't have a choice. It's like you just have to promote your stuff and just sort of hope that the right side of the internet gets hold of it.
I mean, fair. Considering, you know, I have a pretty much almost opposite view on the social media plane because that's what I do.
Yeah, it's your thing, isn't it? Yeah.
That is my thing. I don't necessarily think that like, you know, the whole like TikTok famous is what to achieve or like what to be aiming for or anything like that. But I
Mm.
do think that, you know, I have the sort of perspective on, you know, it's a tool, however, or in whatever capacity you choose to use it is up to you,
Yeah.
but it's not going to do you any harm. It's only really going to ever do you good. But that's
No,
my
I
thing.
think you are right. I think you're 100% right because it's like if you realistically, if we aren't online,
Mhm.
no one will hear anything.
Yeah.
Like posters and CDs and cassettes, it doesn't work anymore. And like I will hold my hands up and say that I'm stuck in the fact that it is not the 90s. Like I'm just gutted that it isn't the 90s because it's like, you know, there's ways that you want to do it, but to your point about like the socials being a tool, it is just exactly that. And like I see your posts come up on my LinkedIn all the time, and like the way you talk about them as a tool, it like it shifts my brain a lot because I don't understand social media mainly. That's the main problem with me. I
Mhm.
don't understand it. I don't enjoy it. I don't get anything out of it. So I'm just like, fuck this, hate it. But it is a tool. Like it is, and it's a huge tool,
Mhm.
particularly TikTok nowadays. That's the one in it.
Yeah.
But I don't have a clue how it works. It terrifies me. I feel like my granddad. Do you know what I mean? It's insane.
Yeah. I mean, the best thing, like I said, you do have to look at it as a tool. And because, like, there are people that will not do it because they don't enjoy it. But then you're just doing yourself a disservice because, you know,
Mm,
as long as you're willing to learn it and figure it out or even just like give it a shot, cool. You know, but not doing it is only going to do you harm.
yeah,
No one's losing out
yeah,
on that more than you are. And so,
yeah,
because as unfortunate as it is in certain ways of like, you know, it has to be the thing and you have to be doing things there for any of your stuff to like reach beyond wherever it is that you live and are playing shows and stuff. It's like that's also how you can generate that fan base, like it's
Yeah,
where you can reach those people before even setting foot in their state or in their, region, whatever. Like
it's crazy. Yeah,
it can be
the reach is
great.
insane, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like if you don't use it, there is a 100% chance that people aren't going to hear it. If you do use it, there's like a 0.1% chance that 100 million people are going to hear it. But that's
Yeah.
still more than that's still better than the 100% chance of
Right.
nobody hearing it.
Yeah.
It's just one of them when when you look through it, because like obviously O's have like some shorts of our music videos on TikTok. Like I'm seeing them, I'm like, oh, 2,500 views. That's wicked, lads. They're like, no, it's not. I'm like, oh shit, I don't understand the scale of it, you
Mm-hmm.
know. But there are people who have got it down to like such a fine art, and like part of me is definitely bitter about it because I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, is it that easy? Could it actually be that simple if you just do it in that way? You know what I mean? And it frustrates you. But then at the same time, it's just algorithms. It's like one person seeing it, the share button is your best friend. Links and word of mouth. No one has to get off their phone and like someone on the other side of the world can listen to a song that we recorded.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the EP, we recorded it in here. It was just my loft, it's my attic. Recorded it up here. And it's mental. It's like it's a bit exponential, isn't it? You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely can come in handy, and the algorithms are never really anybody's friend. The more and more as the time has gone on, it's like it's become a more saturated space. So you're like even starting point of extending that reach is lower than it used to be, and it's harder to get
Mm.
things spread because of how much content has to be spread because there's just more and more of it. But yeah, I mean, it can be the formulaic, I just wrote the song of the summer, or like sitting in your car and doing all that stuff, but it doesn't always have to be. And I think that's where people kind of fall off because you're not doing anything that we haven't seen before. That's why, like I said, the brand thing
Mm.
kind of has to be an intrinsic look. It can't be an external search. Like, you can take this idea and that idea and whatever else. And, because like we do with music, it's like, oh, I think that a lot of the I like the way that they do a lot of their like guitar riffs, and so maybe like that's where that inspiration comes from, and there's those kinds of things that piece it together. But at the end of the day, whatever you're doing has to have your own personal touch, or it means nothing. And that,
Yeah,
like, to put
100%.
it frankly, like that's genuinely how it works. If you're not doing anything that I haven't seen before in any way, shape, or form, even if it's just a 1% change, I will not remember. The point of
Hmm.
branding and social media is to make it so that what I'm doing today, if you were to see it again in 2 weeks, you're going to know that you saw me before.
Yeah,
So,
100%. It's like the Jaws theme song, man. Like first time you hear it,
mm-hmm.
it's a simple concept, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
you've just got to do something that no one's seen before that they're going to remember forever. Shit, how do I do that?
Yeah, no, that it's
You know?
hard because it's like, yeah, it's easy. You just have to create something new, but it's like coming up with something new is like trying to build something out of nothing because there's no
Yeah,
there's nothing tangible there. So to me it's always a consume what you can and get ideas from that and see what different things you can piece together to make something new. It's the same
yeah.
way that music works, but
Do
people
you,
don't think about it that way.
yeah, it's true, isn't it? Do you think it's possible to be like? Because I was thinking about, I don't know if it is possible to be completely original nowadays, because like even like everyone you've been influenced by. So like if you're influenced by Lou Reed, he's been influenced by like 50 people before him.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I don't believe in like for me like creating stuff that is complete like I'm not going to invent new notes because I can't. Like I've got the notes that exist and it's just about using it's like a bit of that, 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 bit of that. And like when you do that in, as you said, like the internal way that is just from you and it's honest and it's real,
Mhm.
when you combine the two of them, that's the magic. Like that's the beef, isn't it? You know, because you're taking things that are slightly familiar to people that people already like. It's got a good track record, and then you add your ownness to it.
I think it depends on what you look at as far as originality, because in a way, that is a new thing. Like original is just like something new and,
Mm.
something new, but also like in a way on brand. Like it's not going to be original if I'm doing this today and something completely different the next day necessarily, at least the way I think about it.
Yeah.
But I think, I think you could argue that even music from 20 years ago wasn't entirely original, if that's kind of because it's all things are spawning from something else. Like the reason that we
Yeah.
got like
Exactly.
hip hop and stuff is like it came from somewhat of like a jazz kind of element or jazz influenced rock and whatever, like however, and folk and country and all the different journeys that new genres have taken. Like like think about it, like EDM music kind of came out of nowhere. It's like when we like but it came from certain
Yeah.
aspects of different things. It's like either original infinitely exists or it never really did in the last like
Yeah.
significant
Yeah.
amount of time.
It's a bit of paradox, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Weird
All
one.
depends on how you look at it ultimately.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that brings us to the last question, which is why music?
It's good for the soul, isn't it? It's good for the soul. It's the simplest answer. It's like there's a lot of things I could have done, you know, if I'd have stayed on like in the academic world. Like I'm not stupid. I could have, I could have worked my way up to something, but there's music is something that then you quickly realize it the more you do it. The more you do it and the more you're around people who don't do it, who appreciate the fact that you do it, it's a very, very unique and personal thing. And ultimately, music has stopped me going insane. Music has really been a lifeblood and a, you know, source of real comfort, which is what everyone says, and for very good reason, because it does that. I think it's magic. That's why music. That's why it's just magic. There's nothing else like it.
Yeah. It really is just kind of its own category of sorts because like what can you even put on the same playing field? What can you put on the same level as music? There's nothing. It's just its own
I think,
thing.
yeah, it's like as well, like when you get into the like sciencey bit of it, it's just like making air vibrate in a certain way. I'm like, that is fucking amazing. Like we live on a planet where like that can physically happen, and we've figured out ways of doing it. And every ancient culture ever has had its own form of it. And like, oh, I don't know, I think it's just fascinating historically, and then the way it's morphed and moved, and the fact that you can take someone who doesn't speak a language, and if they read music, you can give them a piece of music. You could have 30 people who don't speak through words together with completely different instruments, plop them all in a room together, give them the music, and get someone to help them do it, and it would work. Because it would just work because those notes in whatever fucking language you speak mean I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this string vibrate at this frequency to make this sound. And it all comes together. And it's just, yeah, I think it's as close to like real life magic as you're ever going to get. And then not to mention what it can make you feel,
Mm-hmm.
what it can bring together, what it can prevent, the benefits. Yeah, it's just fantastic.
Yeah, it's just an infinite, like it's indescribable. I think that's the word I was
Yeah,
looking
it's
for. It's
never ending.
indescribable. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's nuts.
And you can drink on the job as well, which is brilliant. That's excellent.
Certainly an added perk.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I think that brings us to the end of this episode of the Why Music podcast. Check back again next week for another conversation with another independent artist. Thanks for listening.